In the last 2 centuries, the world order was dominated by nations with strong navies. It started with Europe, where the United Kingdom, Spain and France used their navies to colonize. After World War II, the United States emerged as the next blue water power, and America has dominated the high seas ever since. But now, they've got a competitor unlike ever before, one that likes to flaunt its might as long as it's on unarmed boats of nations with much smaller navies. Because for China, it's not about picking a fair fight. It's more about Xi Jinping showing his countrymen that he has the strongest navy in the region. The People's Liberation Army Navy or PLAN is the world's largest navy in total number of ships, particularly when you count the Coast Guard and gangs of fishing vessels that China has militarized. However, the United States still has the highest tonnage among all navies, with Beijing playing catch-up. The People's Liberation Army Navy has 400,000 sailors. China's navy has close to 380 vessels. There are over 100 missile boats, over 110 corvettes and frigates, about 50 destroyers, over 60 submarines including diesel and nuclear powered, almost 50 amphibious attack vessels and 2 aircraft carriers. And now China is testing its 3rd aircraft carrier. It's named Fujian after the eastern province that overlooks the Taiwan Strait. And the Fujian is being termed as a supercarrier because it's going to be the largest and most advanced flotilla of the Chinese Navy. The Fujian aircraft carrier is going to be China's largest ship. The Fujian is currently undergoing sea trials. It has a displacement of almost 80,000 tons. It will be the first Chinese aircraft carrier to use an electromagnetic catapult or EMALS. EMALS is a quicker way of launching a fighter jet when compared to the conventional ski ramp or steam catapults. China now becomes only the 2nd nation to deploy EMALS technology along with the US. The Fujian will be able to carry almost 80 fighter jets, and the supercarrier is expected to be inducted by 2030. So why is China rapidly advancing its naval power? Because Beijing likes to be a bully. The Chinese Navy has actively clashed with navies of neighboring countries. Beijing claims Manila's Scarborough shoal and the Spratly Islands in the West Philippine Sea. And just north of Taiwan, China also claims Japan's Senkaku Islands. In the waters around these islands, ships from the Chinese Navy patrol frequently. Xi Jinping's boats gang up against smaller boats and use water cannons. And despite being the aggressor, Beijing tries to play the victim card.
China has always insisted on resolving maritime disputes through friendly consultations with the countries directly involved. But we will not allow good intentions to be abused or international law to be distorted. We will legitimately defend our rights in accordance with the law against intentional infringement and will resolutely and reasonably counteract unreasonable provocation. As President Xi Jinping has pointed out, the Pacific Ocean is large enough to accommodate all countries of the Pacific. The ocean should not be an arena for countries to show off their force and engage in gunboat diplomacy.
战热战，但领土主权不容侵犯。
On one hand, China talks about behaving maturely in the seas, while on the other, Xi Jinping orders his sailors to prepare for deployment. Xi Jinping wants to arm twist neighboring countries. The Chinese president has achieved his much-touted reunification. Except it wasn't what his people were expecting. Xi Jinping has unified other Asian nations. The Philippines, Thailand, India, Taiwan and Japan are working with each other closer than ever. And standing in China's way is the strongest blue water power in the world, the United States Navy. In fact, America has bases all around China's coastline. US troops are stationed in Japan, South Korea, Guam, the Philippines, Australia and Thailand. And this year, the US has conducted maritime operations with all its allies. The most recent were held in the Philippines, where American and Filipino troops practiced the sinking of mock Chinese ships.
Balikatan centers around, besides those traits that I talked about of transparency, respect of sovereignty, seeking peaceful resolutions, but being prepared for the worst. When we prepare for the worst, what I think we've seen in this Balikatan, and I'm excited that we'll continue to refine that, is the key maritime terrain, securing key maritime terrain, either taking it or defending it, which we saw today. And they're all building block approaches that leads to sea control.
However, Xi Jinping does not appreciate America's presence in the region. And Beijing has made it abundantly clear that Washington would pay a heavy price for crossing the red line.
But the China-US relationship is facing more negative factors and all kinds of disruptions. China's legitimate development rights have been unreasonably suppressed and our core interests are facing challenges. Should China and the US keep to the right direction of moving forward with stability or return to a downward spiral? We always call for respecting each other's core interests and urge the US not to interfere in China's internal affairs, not to hold China's development back, and not to step on China's red lines on China's sovereignty, security, and development interest.
In response, the United States calls China's maritime actions provocative and dangerous.
Meetings I discussed the PRC's dangerous actions in the South China Sea, including against routine Philippine maintenance operations and maritime operations near the Second Thomas Shoal. Freedom of navigation and commerce in these waterways is not only critical to the Philippines, but to the U.S. and to every other nation in the Indo-Pacific, and indeed around the world. That's why so many nations have expressed concern about the PRC's maritime maneuvers. I made clear that while the U.S. will continue to work to de-escalate tensions, our defense commitments to the Philippines remain ironclad.
Despite China having the numbers, Xi Jinping's ships and sailors have practically no combat experience. And while they may look like the mightier force on paper, only time will tell if the Chinese Navy can actually hold on to its waters.